In 1999, in an attempt to save themselves as they were crumbling financially, Marvel sold the rights to Spider-Man and all of his villains to Sony. In the 2010s, Marvel went to Sony and was like, "Hey Sony, we got a really cool universe now that makes us a lot of money. Would you let us play with Spider-Man so we can make you money too?" And so they did, but that left Sony in a really weird spot. They had all these villains, but they were hero-less now. There was a Spider-Man-shaped hole. These villains were wandering aimlessly through the ether without making Sony money, and so Sony decided, "F*** Spider-Man, f*** him to hell. We don't care about Spider-Man." You know why? Because we've got the Venomverse. Oh, okay, no, apparently it's Sony's Pictures universe of Marvel characters. They called it Spunk? They called it Spunk. Like, it sounds like c***. Oh wait, never mind. It's not called Spunk anymore. Apparently it's Sony's Spider-Man universe. Well, I'm still gonna call it Spunk because I think that that's way funnier. The struggle to pick a name for this weird universe is indicative of a wider problem. These Sony producers have lost their mind. They are drunk and they are out of control and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. How do you make a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man? That is wild. That's a wild thing to do. Well, they keep having nods to it. Matt Smith buys a copy of the Daily Bugle in Morbius to make you think like Spider-Man might be in the Daily Bugle. He might be there. We don't know. I haven't seen Madam Web yet. I will later in this video. But you know, webs. Spider web, Spider-Man. Every poster in this has spider webs. They turned Ezekiel, which I remember looking like an old man. They just made him look like Spider-Man but evil to make you think like, oh, maybe that's Spider-Man in a funny costume. And it's tragic, really. They have to save all the best villains for the real movies, so they're resulting to make films about characters like Madam Web and El Muerto. God knows if that one will ever happen. Niche characters wouldn't be the worst idea if the movies were good, but they're obviously not. They're drunk. Again, they're drunk. The one thing that sort of worked for them is the film that they started off of. While I'm going to be talking in length about the quality of these films, I also want to talk about each film as a business decision, as a part of this larger puzzle, which is called a cinematic universe. Starting things off with Venom was definitely the right call. It's one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains / anti-heroes. Venom is sick. Venom brings in money. Yes, it's a bit of a shame that having those movies probably means that he's not going to be in as much Spider-Man stuff, but that's not that bad because we already got to see him in the incredible movie that is Spider-Man 3. When I watched this film in theaters, I remember being pretty disappointed. I was very excited for Venom, and I watched this and I was like, this is generic, this is whatever. I don't care about Venom. But this time I kind of really liked it. I feel like part of the reason as to why I enjoyed this more is because superhero movies have just really derailed since that film came out. Marvel's movies are just way too polished and also kind of bad for me to care about them anymore. That seeing something that is as crude as Venom felt a bit refreshing. This isn't your granddad's hero. This is an anti-hero. He says pussy. He says shit. He can say fuck, but only like one time, so the movie can maintain its PG rating. This movie is just incredibly camp. It really reminds me of the early 2000s. There's a scene where Venom turns into a dog. If that's not the most early 2000s thing, I don't know what is. It really reminded me of films that I really liked as a kid, like the original Hulk movie, and I also really liked the Scooby-Doo films as well. The visual effects are about as good as a Scooby-Doo movie. You know, the effect of him having the half Venom face, half Tom Hardy face, absolutely hideous. I'm not defending that. The story in Venom is this: a spaceship crashes into East Malaysia, with a bunch of Venom goop in it, a bunch of his goop and all of his family's goop. There's a cool horror sequence where Venom's, I don't remember his name. It's one of the other guys, one of the other symbiotes. He takes control of like an astronaut, and he's like killing people, and we get this whole thing in the movie where we're seeing this symbiote kill a person and then take control of another person, and so on and so forth. The Venom logo kind of looks like which makes sense. I guess that's why they call it the Spunkiverse. The villain in this is a guy called Drake. He's like a billionaire. Sadly, it's not the real Drake. It's an actor. He's like a real dick. He's like a real horrible guy. He takes people in and he does all sorts of experiments on them. They calm this guy down as he's locked in a box with a symbiote. Drake tells this guy called Isaac the story of the binding of Isaac and how Isaac was presented to be sacrificed for God. And to make it even more obvious, he says,
"This time, I will not abandon us."
Which I think is really fun, but I will also say I don't think that this guy is extra enough for this sort of role. I would have loved some real kooky shit, you know? I would like some real extra acting while delivering the Binding of Isaac scene. Tom Hardy is a journalist. He's called Eddie, and he's looking into this guy, this Drake guy. He's like, "Drizzy Drake, when are you releasing your next mixtape?" And he's like, "I'm not that Drake, man. I'm sorry. I'm an actor." He breaks into his lab. Venom's goop goes inside of him, and then this movie becomes a buddy romance film. They're like the old Muppets from the Muppets. They just keep bickering all the time. I hated it at first, but as time went, I just kind of found it really endearing. Just imagining Tom Hardy in his booth talking to himself in his voice, and then the Bane voice. Really funny. Venom is really mean to him at some point. He even calls him a pussy.
Jump. Pussy.
And all of this tension culminates in this one incredible scene. In buddy movies, we usually get this moment, right? The tensions build up, and at some point, they fall out, and they both go to their separate paths, and they realize the value of their friendship. And we get this scene here in f***ing Venom. But here, they only split up for what felt to me like 4 minutes. Venom understands that it's wrong to eat people's heads all the time, and murdering is bad, and he comes back in the form of Lady Venom and proceeds to make out with Tom Hardy. Later on in the movie, we find out that it was apparently Venom's idea to introduce himself and to make out with him. I have incredible filmmaking. I have no words. Venom says, "On my planet, I am kind of a loser like you." And again, in my original watch, I thought that was kind of cheap. This moment was not earned. But this time, I liked it. Yes, this is true. Venom and Eddie are the biggest losers that I've ever seen in one of those superhero movies. Tom Hardy has dedicated himself to playing two weirdos that somehow win because together they just suck a bit less. They're not losers in this, like, you know, sort of like cool, sexy way. It's not like if you'd see a scene with Timothée Chalamet and he has like one sleeve like this, one sleeve like that, and he'd be like, sorry, kind of a loser. No, Eddie comes in and he traumatizes his ex-fiance and her new boyfriend, and then he jumps into a tank and eats a live crab. Not many people could have pulled this scene off, but Tom Hardy, I'm pretty sure he did. The Venom movie doesn't really care about giving you a story that will really move you or anything. It doesn't care about telling you this horrific tale about a man that has an alien murderous creature living inside of him that needs to feed off of the heads of real people to survive. This movie just wants to give you a pretty fun roller coaster ride. And hey, I enjoy it. In terms of looking at this movie as part of the universe, I feel like this could lead to a problem. This movie has made a lot of money, $800 million against a budget of $100 million, but the next one made less, and I think that the next one after that might have an even bigger drop-off. Guess we'll see. We're in a time where a superhero movie simply existing is not enough to bring people into a cinema. You kind of need to care about the character, right? That's why the new Ant-Man movie and the new Marvels didn't do so well. But Guardians of the Galaxy, a franchise that has established itself to be of very good quality, did incredibly well last year. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. I enjoyed this movie. I'll give it a 6.4 out of 10. Venom, let there be carnage. In the after credit scene for the first Venom movie, Tom Hardy goes into a dark room and meets Cletus something, a serial killer apparently, but it's actually just Woody Harrelson in the world's funniest wig. In that moment, he manifested the existence of the next movie. He said, "Let there be carnage."
There's gonna be carnage.
Sadly, in the second movie, they gave him a less bad wig, so I was kind of afraid going into this. But I ended up loving that one even more. I guess I'm kind of like Eminem. I'm a Venom fan now. This movie's really funny.
Is Venom with you?
He's dead.
I'm playing dead right now.
These two have reached a very fascinating point in their relationship. Venom keeps defending Eddie, which I think is kind of sweet.
After you killed his wife, your mother, just by being born.
You son of a bitch! No!
They have an almost sibling-like relationship in this movie, which is very heartwarming, but also a bit disturbing, considering that one scene in the first movie. This isn't a perfect movie by any means. There's a lot of repeating stuff from the first one. They have another falling out scene, although I think it's done way better in this one. The big conflict in this movie, besides the fact that Eddie needs to, share a body with a terrible monster that keeps calling him names all the time, is that Venom wants to use their shared body to eat people, but Eddie thinks that that is bad. A classic moral dilemma. The arguments reach a boiling point. They have a really funny fight scene where they fight each other and hurt each other. Venom ends up leaving him, and then he goes on his own adventure. He has like an adventure of self-discovery, trying to figure himself out without being in the shadow of Eddie. He goes to like a rave, and people put like glowing stick necklaces on him. He finds out that people can love him for who he is.
You love me! And I'm free!
It's clear that this film is a lot more bad shit than the last one, and a lot of that has to do with Woody Harrelson's character, the murderer. Even his origin story is wild. Him and Eddie develop a relationship because Eddie's been writing news reports about him. Woody Harrelson just leans in and gives him a little bite, a little nasty little bite, which makes it so he has Eddie's blood, which is mixed with Venom's DNA, inside of his body. But then, when he gets the lethal injection, that somehow causes the creation of the symbiote Carnage, which if we were to draw a family tree, that would mean that Carnage is Venom's son. I don't know why we had to draw a family tree for that. That's actually quite a simple thing to explain. Something that I'm enjoying within these movies is the fact that we're getting to watch a fresh universe. If you're living in New York in the MCU, you're probably so desensitized to wild shit happening all the time around you. You're like going outside, you see an alien spaceship land on your nearest bagel stand, and you're like, Jesus, guess I gotta take a detour to work today. But here, when Carnage is unleashed, everyone is like, what the fuck? What in God's name is this abomination? He looks horrible. Woody Harrelson has like a little bit of Carnage kind of laying limply outside of him. Looks like a limp sausage. I guess that's why they call it the goddamn Spunkiverse, huh? Continuing with the early 2000s vibe, this film is just really raw. Here are the rawest moments of Let There Be Carnage. I'm gonna rate this thing like a Watch Mojo video. Let's do this. Number 7. They say the name of the movie. Woody Harrelson says at some point, Let There Be Carnage, but I couldn't find the clip. That's why this is only a number 7. Number 6. Venom goes into Miss Chan's body. That's a character in the movie. I haven't mentioned her before, but she exists. The effect with the Venom eyes on top of her actual face is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And then Tom Hardy's ex-wife, which Venom is also in love with, to convince Venom to help Tom Hardy, she comes over and she flirts with Venom and she calls Venom, like, sexy.
Yeah, you're the big sexy hero.
We're in the top 5, everybody. Let's do this. These are the best 5 raw moments of Venom Let There Be Carnage. Woody Harrelson's character is in love with this other murderer. He breaks her out of prison, and then they're making out as Carnage's sausage bits are wrapped around them. And that's what cinema's all about. Number 4, lucky number 4, Woody Harrelson's character and his beloved murderer buddy. They're about to get married in this church, and the priest, he says, hey everyone, before we do this marriage just now, does anyone want to say something negative? At that moment, Venom goes through the church's door, and he's like, you piece of shit. I'm gonna Venom the shit out of you, you shithead. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the top 3 now. Number 3, Carnage eats a priest's head and then says, power up.
Power up!
Number 2, Venom feet. That one's just a bit nasty. Actually, I'm gonna take this off the list, actually. I'm sorry about that. Number 2, there's this emotional scene towards the end. Spoiler alert, by the way. There's gonna be spoilers from now on, where Woody Harrelson's character says to Tom Hardy, hey, man, hey, all I wanted really here was your friendship. What? Venom thinks the same thing as me, and he just says, fuck this guy, and bites this dude's head off. Number 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment that we've waited for this entire video. This is the number 1 rawest moment. Apparently, Carnage has hacking powers. And before the hacking begins, we hear one of the just greatest lines in any superhero movie.
Got any of those internets?
Got any of those internets?
Got any of those internets?
Got any of those internets? A sentence that only a twisted mind like the one of Cletus Cassidy can utter. Luckily, with the help of today's sponsor NordVPN, I don't need to worry about any of that. I'm as cool as a cucumber. Here's the thing, Woody Harrelson. Nord helps me become safer with a single click. They're not just a VPN, their dark web monitor notifies you if someone has leaked your credentials online. It's the fastest VPN on the planet, Woody Harrelson. I use NordVPN to watch this movie, for example. I'm in the UK right now, and it's not available on Netflix over here. But if I use NordVPN and make the internet believe that I'm in Canada, I can watch it however many times I want. I'm everywhere. Try to catch me now, Woody Harrelson. Get your exclusive NordVPN deal at nordvpn.com/pinely. And if you also get NordPass at checkout, you could get a good deal on that, which keeps all your passwords close at hand even when you're offline. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. There were a bunch of things in this movie that really worked. The dynamic between Woody Harrelson and the other murderer was pretty great. Her superpower is that she can scream really loudly to the point of like really hurting people. But the symbiote's biggest weakness is really horrible sound. So that leads to kind of a pretty interesting dynamic, right? The 3 of them, Carnage, Woody Harrelson, and a screaming person, that they're incompatible in their essence. Pretty interesting dynamic, guys. Pretty interesting stuff. In terms of bad things, I don't know. I just kind of would have loved more Venom versus Carnage scenes. There are a lot of tropes in this movie. A lot of things that, again, are repeated from the first one. You get 2 scenes in both movies where a character says, we're not so different, you and I, in some variation.
You and I are not so different.
You and I are the same.
But hey, I enjoyed this. It was fun seeing a movie that is just so out there and really doesn't take itself seriously at all. I'm rating this purely out of my enjoyment and not off of objective quality or whatever that is. I'm giving this film a 7 out of 10. Yeah, in terms of box office, against a budget of $110 million, which, as usual, you then double because of marketing costs, this film made $506 million. Pretty good amount. Good stuff. Good stuff all in all. But still quite a drop from the first one. And yeah, there's a Venom movie coming out this year. Superhero movies are performing less and less well in the box office nowadays. I don't know if this next one's gonna do well. Going to see movies is expensive, and people are now, more than ever, avoid seeing movies with really bad ratings. Which, yeah, these two films definitely have that. But hey, when that movie comes out, I'm definitely gonna be seated. At the end of this film, Venom shows up in the Marvel universe because of what happens in the Spider-Man film. And we get like a little tease of like, ooh, maybe, you know, hey Marvel, hey, do you think that maybe Venom and Spider-Man could do something together? It'll make us $1 billion. Can we? Morbius, released in whatever year it says in this title card. Similarly to Venom, Morbius was a bit of a pleasant surprise. I really liked how short it was. It's 1 hour and 40 minutes. All these movies are really short, gracefully short, I'll say, for Morbius. Alright, enough with the compliments. I don't know if this is the worst movie I've seen, but this is definitely the most miserable one. There is no joy in Morbius. There's one joy. There's that scene where Matt Smith does a little dance. I had joy within that scene. I was like dancing as well when I saw that. Craziest thing about Morbius is that I watched it 2 weeks ago before the intention of making this video, and my brain didn't care enough about what was happening to collect any sort of memory of it. So I had to rewatch Morbius for this video, and it was a struggle, I'll tell you that much. During my rewatch, it took me 3 goes to finish this whole thing. Here are the 2 writers of Morbius, Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. Sounds like fake names, in my opinion. I don't want to start a conspiracy here, but are these fake people? Are they just a disguise for ChatGPT? Because here is every movie that these 2 guys have worked on together. Here they are on the screen. And now, let's reveal every single one's Letterboxd score. Insane, right? They have, and I've calculated this using very advanced math, an average rating of 22% on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't watched any of these movies, so I can't speak of the quality of them myself, but 22%, an average. Who's hiring them? And that's not even the craziest part, right? They got hired for Morbius after they made all those movies. Some of them, yeah, I guess those movies made some money for the studio, but they never managed to create a long-term asset because these are movies that you essentially get tricked into watching. But whatever, they did Morbius. Morbius was, we're gonna go over the box office stuff in a bit, but a flop. It was a flop. Everyone knows that it didn't do well. And then they did Madam Web. They came back again from Madam Web. I don't know, man. I just think there's something a bit nefarious going on here. Either that, or Sony just knows that these 2 guys would make whatever movie they want. That they're essentially just a gun for hire. Morbius is kind of like if someone found a 10-year-old copy of How to Write a Superhero Movie for Dummies. There is nothing that occurs in this movie that is new. It is just mountains and mountains of tropes. And I don't always mind tropes. I think Venom has a lot of tropes, and I had fun watching that. But they do those tropes just like they don't understand them. Protagonist being a smart guy with a little bit of edge to him.
How did you get my passcode?
The first 6 digits of pi backwards is your password for everything.
Morbius is a pretty smart, science-loving guy. His password is the first 6 digits of pi. You know? It's a pretty niche number. You've probably never heard of it. So they're obviously going for his Tony Stark, like most superhero movies have done in the past few years.
I love this movie. Is this the part where the mysterious guy with the hoodie comes in and kicks everybody's asses? I love it.
He's smart, but he's a little bit cocky. But the problem with Jared Leto is that This man is not likable.
Leave the sciencey stuff and a bag of spicy Cheetos.
It's like also doesn't make sense because part of this movie shows the conflict of being a vampire and also being a lame scientist. But also, he feels guilty about the vampire stuff, but after 2 seconds he's like,
Did you know that there are 27 bones in the human hand?
bad guy versus good guy dynamic. So the villain, you see, he used to be a good guy. He used to be best friends with our main good guy. But then he was corrupted by power.
If anyone has a claim to being my favorite, it's you. I've devoted my life to you.
Liar. You pitied me before. You're repulsed by me now.
Everyone keeps telling Matt Smith, he's the villain in this. He used to be like Morbius's friends when they were growing up. Everyone keeps telling him, I can't believe that you've become this bad guy, this evil vampire. You still have time to change. This isn't you. There wasn't, what are these people talking about? There wasn't any change to here. If you watch the movie, I mean, it's really short. He became a vampire and he immediately just started talking about how much he loves murdering all the time. He clearly loved murdering from the get-go, but being a vampire just made it really easy for him. The way they try to show the moral difference between those two characters is also pretty similar to other movies, but also done horribly. Because Morbius is an anti-hero, right? He has to do bad stuff at some point. They need to give him that edge to some extent, right? But he still needs to look good compared to the even worse bad guy. And so this movie is constantly obsessed with rationalizing what Morbius has done. So Morbius, the sexy genius scientist, realizes that bat DNA can make it so him and his friend Matt Smith cannot be disabled anymore. But it's a bit of an experimental bit of science. So he and his girlfriend doctor go on international waters with a bunch of bodyguards with them, and they do the experiment. And then he turns into a vampire, and then he kills. Morbius murders and drinks the blood of the 8 people that were there that he hired. The people he murders, as far as we know, are innocent. The scene where he kills them is horrifying, you know? You can see the fear in their eyes as Morbin murders all of them. We do get a pretty short scene where he feels regret for all of the murders. He's like, I did a bunch of murders. I'm so sad. But that is quickly replaced by a different scene where he's doing parkour across the lab, saying how bats are his best friends now.
I've become something different. I feel a kinship with these creatures.
But of course, if we're doing everything by the books, the villain needs to be worse. And so we get this, a dead nurse. Matt Smith's character kills a nurse and drinks her blood, and then the movie tells us that is way more messed up than the 8 people that Morbius murdered.
8 dead mercs on a boat really doesn't ruffle our feathers. I'm pretty sure they were guilty of something and happy to have them off the water.
But Nurse Sutton, single mother with twin girls, that's...
You don't know if those bodyguards that he hired to help him out with his experiment, you don't know if they have a little kid. At least Matt Smith's character has fun all the time. At least he's a joyful guy who loves murders. He does a little dance after he does his murders. You know, the scene where we find out that Matt Smith killed the nurse is edited in such a funny way. So Morbius goes to jail for like 3 seconds. I don't know why. He's just in jail because they thought it would look cool to have pictures with him in jail uniforms. He goes to jail because the nurse died and everyone thinks that it's him. And at that point, we know that he took the vampire serum, but we don't know that Matt Smith did it. But then we get this reveal scene. Matt Smith goes to Morbius's jail cell, and on his way out, he leaves his cane. That would be a subtle enough way to tell us that he took the vampire serum. But then the filmmakers realized that if you're buying a ticket to watch Morbius, you must be an idiot. So they just keep panning to show like the cane, and they just keep panning to like his feet. They do it like 3 times. See guys, no crutches, he's a vampire. Do you get it? Do you get it yet? At the end of this, they do the whole villain is about to win thing But then at the last moment, our superhero gains some sort of strength and wins the situation. In a better movie, there would be some sort of payoff here, right? Morbius realizes that love is the final key, and he decides to make out with Matt Smith, and that wins the day. That doesn't happen at all. Morbius just suddenly gains the ability to summon bats to help him out. Just thousands and thousands of bats just showed up out of nowhere to save the day. The bats are the ones who won the day, really. They're the real heroes of this story. A cop side story. In terms of conflict pressure points in a superhero movie, we usually have the villain coming to get the superhero, and often we get another story of cop or two cops trying to get our guy or girl as well. The point of it is to give us this really claustrophobic feeling, to feel like he could get caught at any moment. But here, these two guys, one of them is Tyrese Gibson, the other guy, I don't know who the actor is, but he looks like Commissioner Gordon. My God, they are just completely useless. At one point, they ask Morbius's doctor girlfriend, hey, how come you were on this ship where all these people were murdered on, and you stayed alive?
I'm having a little bit of a hard time remembering what happened that night.
Sure, let's go.
When I finish talking about this movie, I'm gonna forget it completely, so before that happens, I want to now talk about the moment that I enjoyed the most. We see Morbius talking to his friend about something that who cares about. This guy is drinking, he's having a sip of coffee. That's sip of coffee number 1. They're talking, who cares? Nobody. Sip of coffee number 2 already. They're talking about whatever, no one cares. There he is going for the 3rd sip of coffee. Absolutely sip of coffee number 4. And it cut, but I'm pretty sure he went for a 5th. God bless that man. He's gonna his pants after this, I assume. I assume that's the next scene. Rating this out of 10, I'd have to give this a 2. If you thought I was gonna give this any more, you have lost your mind. You must be on that vampire serum. Morbius's budget was around $85 million, and it made $167 million. Marketing cost is usually about the same as budget, so we double that. That means that this movie has lost money. Oh no. You probably remember that there were a lot of memes surrounding Morbius, and that led Sony to believe that everyone wants this film to be re-released. And they did. On June 3rd, 2022, they re-released this film to another 1,000 theaters, hoping that maybe now that it's a meme, it'll do well. And guess what? They lost money again and made just over $280,000 over that weekend, which isn't, that's not great. What I'm gonna say now is either a very strong indication for how much this franchise fell off from its $800 million beginning, or of how much my friends just don't want to hang out with me. I've asked so many people if they want to go see Madam Web with me. So many people. So many people. And everyone said no. Hey, you want to go watch Madam Web later today? I'll get your ticket. I'm gracious. I was going to get his ticket. I was doing a very nice thing. What time? How long is the film? He says. Film starts at 8:30, I say, and the film is a little less than 2 hours. A short runtime by any means. James doesn't care that the conditions here are pretty perfect. He just says, rough. Hey, before you say no, I heard it's really good. But that doesn't help. He says, I want to support you, but that's rough. He didn't even feel the need to give me a full-on explanation or anything, or make up an excuse. It was clear to both of us that going to watch Madam Web would not be an enjoyable experience. I'm gonna be going alone. My only friend will be the small wine bottle that I'm gonna buy on the way to the movie theater. That's how I'm gonna be spending my Friday night. I ended up going the next day because I was too sleepy. I took the bus to meet my friend. He was waiting for me at the counter of the corner shop. I got myself a cookie. Treat myself. Why not? I deserve it. It's Madam Web Day. When I finally arrived to the movie theater, I was surprised to find a massive group of people lining up. Finally, I wasn't alone. It's great that in this age of streaming, thousands of people are still out there showing love to real cinema. Okay, went to get the tickets. I went on a weekend, usually a very packed time at a movie theater, and it seemed like there were less than 10 people who were gonna share a room with me that day. On one of the rows, I saw a person, just like me, who went to see Madam Web alone. In that moment, I remembered the lesson of Venom, that together two outcasts can do incredible things. And so, out of a completely empty row, I decided to book my ticket right next to them. I was excited to meet my new friend. I fantasized about potentially interviewing them after the movie, asking them what they thought of Madam Web and where the Spunkiverse might be heading. So I went to my seat and waited. I waited and waited and waited. I'm pretty sure they saw me and just sat far away from me. I guess that's just how it is. I'm a loser, like Eddie Brock, an outcast, like Morbius. My only friend for the next 2 hours is right here. What the fuck was this movie? Hello, I'm wearing glasses now. That's because watching Madam Web made me feel like a genius. So you know how when you finish watching a really good movie, you can kind of have this feeling of like, you know, when you're walking around in the world that you still feel like you're in the world of the movie. You feel like a bit hazy in a way. This is the first time that I had that for a bad film. First thing I want to say, why do people keep hiring these two motherfuckers? Listen, this is a PSA to all actors. If your agent gives you a script that has these two motherfuckers attached to it, run and fire your agent. Which, by the way, Dakota just fired her agent after this movie came out. How do you even write a movie this bad? It's insane. It has one of the worst editing, I think the worst editing I've ever seen in any movie in my life. And that's something that I realized incredibly early on. Now, because this movie just came out, I don't have clips from this film, so I'm gonna have to reenact the scenes from this movie for you to understand what I'm talking about. Or in the 70s, I'm in a jungle. Oh, by the way, all of these movies, I haven't even mentioned this. Venom, Morbius, and this one, I'm pretty sure all of them started out in like a jungle or a forest. I don't know why. So Madam Web's mom, original Madam Web, and I'm doing this scene now. I'm Dakota Johnson's mom, and I'm in a jungle, and I'm looking for some spiders with some special abilities that are gonna cure some disease. Ouch! My baby just kicked my stomach. Wait, what the ridiculous stuff. I don't know who the hell this movie's aimed for. In the row in front of me, there was like a mom and her two kids, like her two young daughters. And this movie just like, there's so much blood everywhere and like people dying all the time. And it's like, it's not like an adult is gonna like really enjoy this thing. It's the sort of bad writing that only a kid could enjoy. There's all these like scenes of like action happening, and like the Madam Web is in the ambulance and she's like, I'm gonna have to get this guy another 2 cc's of blood, and there's all these like comedic zooms all the time as if it's like the Office or something. It feels really out of place. Madam Web is the first film to dare to ask, what if we took the writers from Morbius and matched them with a cameraman that is being flipped around as if a bully is holding him and being shaken around for his coins to fall out. I've never seen a film that's consistently filmed like that. It's like I'm watching like a Kendrick Lamar music video. It's crazy. At the beginning of this, I had notes about like stuff that's quite like that I'd critique that in a normal movie. Like the chemistry is dog shit. Not the fault of the actors. They would have these are like good actors usually. Like Dakota Johnson meets these 3 girls. They don't know each other, these 3 girls, and then like immediately, it doesn't even skip a beat, and immediately they fall into like this dynamic of like criticizing each other. It's like, you need to stop caring about science, and you need to stop caring about skateboarding, and you, Sydney Sweeney, you need to stop caring about having glasses and looking like a nerd. This is something that it would make sense to criticize normally, but in this movie, the problems are just way too big that they overshadow anything else. I will say though, I had such a blast watching this. I could tell that like the family in front of me and the family in the back were quite enjoying it. So I had to like, during like some like emotional scenes, I had to like really stifle my laugh because of how goofy everything was. There's constant ADR, the evil Spider-Man guy. I don't know what happened to like to his audio. But the ADR does not match his lip movements at times. It's really weird. I do want to say, I wrote my notes in a notepad, not on my phone. So I wasn't a dick about this. But then I moved it all to my phone. One of my notes is, why is this set in the early 2000s? There's absolutely no reason. Like, there's just nothing. They listened to Britney Spears once, and then there's a scene where everyone's like, wow, I'm loving this new song, this new Toxic song. That's it. That is the one reference to the early 2000s. Doesn't make any sense. Worst thing about the editing is built into the concept of this movie. The concept, I realize I didn't even talk about the plot, but it's actually kind of cool. Madam Web, you can like see into the future sometimes, kind of like That's So Raven, the Disney show. But at first, she's almost kind of losing her mind because of the superpower. Because she like doesn't know what's happening now and what's happening in the future. But in the way that this film tackles this thing, it makes actually me lose my mind. So like the bad guy is like fighting, but then they threw like fireworks at him. So then there's like explosions on the bad guy, but then Madam Web has a vision where she's seeing another explosion that's happening in 2 seconds. And then that explosion that's happening in 2 seconds happens. And I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck is any of this? We're seeing like a person die like 3 seconds into the future, but then we're back into the present, so Madam Web goes and helps that person. It's like, it's bad editing, but it's built into the script. So I don't know if I'm blaming really the editor here. This is a pre-planned thing. I want to talk a little bit about the audacity of this film and all the promotional material. We saw Sydney Sweeney with like the black Spider-Woman costume thingy. It's like a really, really big, huge part of the promotional material in this thing. Well, guess what? This doesn't happen in the movie. Sydney Sweeney and the other 2 teenage girls that are being saved here. Evil Spider-Man has like this vision of them having spider powers and attacking him. But because of Madam Web's involvement in this and her ability to see the future, this never happens. These girls never get that power. They're just running around. This is a tale about a woman that can see 3 seconds into the future and just 3 younger teenagers that are running around with her. Who cares? So yeah, they never have the spider powers. That's dumb. Another bit about the audacity of this movie. I had to write down this line 1-to-1 because I was like, nah, man. That's just disrespectful what you're doing here. So Dakota Johnson meets like this spider mentor. I think it's him that says it. She meets this spider mentor who like, they have like a relationship for like 5 to 10 minutes tops. And during that time, she learns a very profound lesson. A lesson that's never been taught in any spider-related movie ever. He says, and I wrote this 1-to-1, when you're ready to take on the responsibility, great power will come. You thieves. I also wrote her superpower is running people over. I mean, she can see into the future, right? But she doesn't have any super strength. She needs to overwhelm this guy who's incredibly strong. Spider-Man powers again. And but like the first 2 times in which he does that, her solution is like seeing into the future and then getting into a car and driving to where he is and running him over. I mean, that makes sense. I guess that's what I'd do if I'd have that power and I had to fight that guy. I'd get in a car and I'd run him over. It's just kind of funny that they did that twice in a row. Her other superpower is drowning. She drowns twice in this film. Honestly, it was so much fun. You know how I said that Morbius, like, doesn't have any joy in it? Any joy in the fact that it's bad? There is so much joy to be had with Madam Web. There's no need to watch it in cinemas. It'll probably be like on Netflix or something pretty soon. Just have fun with it. Watch it alone or with your friends. You're gonna have a blast. I'm gonna have to rate this higher than Morbius. Morbius is like technically a more competent film because I guess you know what's happening in front of you, but it's not nearly as fun. Madam Web is so inherently broken that it's so enjoyable. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. I'm now gonna sing the song Venom by Eminem, the rapper. Knock, knock, let the devil in. Malevolent as I've ever been. Head is spinning. The medicine screaming. Let me in. Like a salad bowl. Edgar Allan Poe. Bedridden. Should have been dead a long time ago. Liquid Tylenol. Gelatins think my skeleton's melting. Wicked, I get all high when I think I've smelled the scent of elephant manure. Hell, I mean Kahlua. Screw it, to hell with it. I went through hell with accelerants and blew up myself again. Venom, I got that adrenaline momentum, and I'm not sure when I'm ever gonna slow up, and I'm ready to snap at any moment. I'm thinking it's time to get They ain't gonna know what hit 'em. Venom, I got that adrenaline momentum, and I'm not knowing when I'm ever gonna slow up, and I'm ready to slap any moment. I'm thinking it's time to get 'em. They ain't gonna know what hit 'em. One of the comments I saw when I went to the music video was, stop asking who's still listening. We will listen it every day till we die.